You're listening to the Identity at the Center podcast. This is the show that talks about identity and access management and making sure you know who has access to what. Let's get started. Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff, and that's Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Not so bad. Yourself?
Good. I'm a little bit happy and a little bit sad. I'm sad because it's the end of the conference, and I've had a fantastic time here. Got to see a lot of old friends and record a lot of great podcasts, make new friends. I'm kind of happy because this podcast is with one of those old friends, Eric. And I won't steal your thunder. I know you do the introductions, man.
Let's introduce him. Eric Anderson, Director of Enterprise Security at Adobe. Welcome back, Eric.
Well, thanks for having me. It's fun to see you guys.
It's been a while. The last time you were with us was episode 91, way back, May 3rd, 2021. Wow. We are now on episode, this will be 188, and for the record, it is November 10th, 2022. So a little bit, almost a year and a half, kind of roughly. Yeah. But we actually saw each other not too long ago at, was it the Authenticate conference?
Authenticate in Seattle,
ran
into each other.
So it's like, hey, I know that guy.
Yeah.
Like, that's the guy that got me turned on to the struts, and I haven't let him live it down ever since. And we're going to get into that. But yes, we are at the Oktane conference. It is the last day, literally the last hours. It wouldn't surprise me that this white room that Okta has generously donated to us to have a space to record in starts crumbling around us as they are kind of breaking things down. So we'll try to keep it to a dull roar in here. So definitely thanks to Okta for supporting us all week. Again, Steven Strong, MVP, totally went to at bat for us and kind of helped us, get a whole bunch of great guests. So this will be the last in the series of episodes that hopefully people have checked out. We had Eugenio Pace this morning that recorded, that went live probably a couple of days ago by the time you hear this, as well as Shiv Ramji, you had Alvina Antar, just a ton of good people from the Okta side that wouldn't have been on if we didn't have people like Steven advocating for us. So again, thank you very much, Steven. And thanks to RSM for sponsoring us by getting us out here and paying for the travel. So thank you very much for that. Let's talk about Oktane. And I think, Eric, the way that I want to start is let's just catch up. It's been a year and a half, I guess. We're not going to have you go back to your whole identity background. We cover that. Go back and listen to episode 91. But what's new? Like, what's changed in the last year or so, I guess, professionally or in your world of identity that you've been thinking about?
I think the biggest change, or I guess I wouldn't use the word change. I'd say it's more of new emphasis placed on devices. We've spent the last 4 years rolling out Zero Trust, really focusing on securing identities. And we've done some device components of it, but now it's really, we're seeing the technology grow and making it easier to scale out. And so we've spent the last year really emphasizing managed equipment and making sure all our employees and everybody's enrolled in managed devices so we can use that as a platform. And then the other focus, we had just started the journey when we met last time of really vendor security and looking at how do we get the same visibility and the security and the signals from a vendor-owned device and vendor accounts. And so we've really dialed that up and been able to focus on that since we last met.
You guys have been working on some really cool stuff. Obviously, we're here at the Okta conference, Okta user conference, I guess. So explain to us a little bit, how are you using Okta in this picture? Are you using the Workforce Identity Cloud, the Customer Identity Cloud, or a little bit of both?
For the enterprise, we're using the Workforce Identity Cloud. We've been one of the early customers of Okta. They're part of our journey through Zero Trust. We've got several vendors, and when we first started down the Zero Trust journey, one of our priorities was how do we leverage existing investments? Because at the time I would argue there probably still isn't, but at the time there was no single vendor that could deliver Zero Trust. So you had to kind of find best of breeds, and Adobe's always been a best of breed type of company. So we took our investments in Okta and at the time some VMware products and DigiCert and some of our vendors, and we stitched those together to deliver our version 1 of a Zero Trust. And one of the things we are pretty proud of is some of the partnerships that Okta has with VMware was us coming to both of them as existing customers saying, hey, you guys should make this stuff work with that stuff. And we helped facilitated that. And they helped us get our Zero Trust off the ground by building a partnership with VMware and Okta. They gave us our first iteration of passwordless authentication using certificates. So that really helped get that off the ground in 2018.
That's not something a lot of companies can do. It's go off and say, hey, billion-dollar company, we'd like you to work better with this other, I'm not sure if they're billion-dollar, but I'm sure they are, right? They're probably big. I think that's probably a benefit of having come from Adobe, right? Is to say, hey, here is something, not only in the from a use case perspective, it's a problem to solve.
Yes.
But being sort of able to leverage sort of your weight of who you are and your brand and your own power to kind of influence the direction a little bit of product to some degree. I think that's a cool thing.
Yeah, I would say I don't know if I would say Adobe's throwing around their weight. We're a creative company. It's like, hey, let's find a creative solution. We're software engineers. We want to bring people together, and a lot of our brand is around customer experience and the like. And so it was a great opportunity to kind of just say, hey, we're all partners together, and let's figure out how can we make this experience better and get some good security out of it. Mm-hmm. And so it's been pretty cool to see how it's evolved.
I think Okta rolled out a lot of new functionality, or some of the functionality maybe was rolled out before, but you're seeing vast improvements in user lifecycle management, the workflow capability, of course, all the stuff on the authentication side. Was there anything that jumped out to you that you think like, oh, okay, I definitely could see using that, leveraging that at Adobe?
I think I don't know if there was any one thing. I think the part I'm more excited about is seeing companies like Okta and a lot of as they're rising up and recognizing the importance of things like identity governance and privileged identity, vaulting, and the things that there's lots of other companies that we're all customers of and we use that have delivered that at the enterprise scale for years. What I think is kind of neat is you've got other companies like Okta coming in and talking about how do we deliver this, maybe even for small business, and then being able to partner with these larger vendors that have an established business. How do they complement each other? So how could you take some of the new technologies that were announced this week and feed those into our established enterprise tools and to enhance those and make those investments rise well? It steers back to the partnership piece. How could we get Okta partnering with some of the other industry leaders in this space and provide a better solution?
Yeah, I think there's always been sort of this ecosystem of sort of like friendly or maybe even frenemy partners, right? Where it's like, there's CyberArk and they have an alliance with XYZ companies. And then you've got SailPoint, for example, in the IGA space. They have the same type of things. And you sort of end up with sort of like these mix and match kind of components. From an interoperability standpoint, it's great. I mean, I think, having a platform that allows you to develop integrations on open standards, whatever it may be, certainly makes the platform stronger, right? That's part of the draw of something like an Okta, where you've got, I think they said something like 7,000 different connectors, right? They probably wrote maybe half of those, right? The others might have been crowdsourced or maybe were a result of a specific client saying, hey, we need a connector for this specific application. And then you don't write that in a one-off. You just add that to your portfolio of, hey, we have now 7,001, 7,002, right? Whoever it may be. Yeah. And having that ecosystem is very important. You've got this platform now from a identity provider perspective where I think you're starting to see some of the vendors in the space really is trying to establish sort of, we are the platform for identity. And I think one of the things we heard this week from the Okta side is their tagline is like the vendor neutral platform for identity. And identity belongs to you, another tagline to get that out there for Okta. But from your perspective where you sit, like how do you see sort of like this identity provider platform working out in the real world? Like, is this something that you build upon, or do you think that there is still space for other identity providers to sort of act as, plugins maybe into your main identity provider?
Yeah. I'm a big believer in centrally managing a lot of these, with identity being at the center of it. And so I like the idea of the centralized center, but then you have, to your point, plugins or auxiliary tools. I mean, there's always going to be smaller little pockets where maybe you need some capabilities. You think, we talked a little bit about privilege. There's, Okta's not there yet. There's some vendors that are well established in that space, and you've got developer needs about being able to automate and access and cloud accounts. I saw some sessions with some of the other vendors here talking about, the cloud identities and how you separate those, and you've got other things that I'm seeing emerging, like guest accounts. You think about tools like Slack and Office and Microsoft. There's a whole fleet of guest accounts that kind of fall out of the scope of a central identity manager, but you need visibility and being able to understand how that works. So I see this as an ecosystem for sure. It's nice to have an anchor. It's almost like a mall, you think. You go to the mall and you've got the anchor stores and then all these other stores that sell similar or complementary products. You do want the anchors in place to help kind of drive the direction, but then build in the specialty pieces that really kind of help elevate the game, so to speak.
Yeah, who's going to be the Sears or the JCPenney?
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
You can have the Nordstrom and the Bloomingdale's and some of those too, but there's always, you kind of need the variety.
Right. How about what's missing from identity today from a technology standpoint? I feel like we've got sort of this trinity of products that are in the access management space that do authentication and maybe to some degree some level of authorization, but that's not really kind of their focus. Then you've got the identity governance side of things, right? Doing sort of more of the lifecycle management, audit, reporting, access certifications, right? Roles, maybe that kind of thing. And then you've got privileged access management, which could be on-prem privilege access, server access, or maybe it's cloud privilege access management, kind of this newer field of KEAM, cloud infrastructure entitlements management. What are we missing from a technology standpoint to sort of complete the puzzle? Is there anything missing, or do we have
that's the magic question? I don't know if we have any. I don't think there's a lack of technology. I think it's really a lack of understanding how to tie them together and have them speak to each other. I mean, I can go back to when we first met. It was through the IDSA, and you think about all those vendors, Okta, SailPoint, CyberArk, VMware, all these companies are part of that alliance, with the idea being is how do we kind of build this framework so we can all talk together and share information, and because everybody's going to be better and worse at some things, and so how do we make it an open, shareable, transparent space where we're breaking down walled gardens? So I think if anything's lacking, it's people are still building siloed walled garden products that make it really difficult to get information out of it. There seems to be, I'm not saying it's a new trend, but it's really like, hey, we want you to use all our stuff. And it's like, that's great, but until it's exactly what I need and works exactly how I want it, I need the flexibility to pick the best of breed at the time. And just continuing that type of...
I want to talk about passwordless. There are probably 4 or 5 themes in this conference. The loudest one was passwordless. You were at the Authenticate show, as were Jeff and I. Obviously, FIDO's all about passwordless.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, look, you've made these great investments in MFA over the years. Do you see passwordless as an evolution of that stream, or do you see it as revolutionary?
I think it's more evolutionary. I think there's certain pockets where it can be revolutionary. I think in the customer experience space, if I'm going to shopping on websites, I mean, little things like Apple Pay recently, being able to use that and have that security. I love that when I'm personally shopping. I feel comfortable, and and then passwordless. I after the Authenticate show, I think I saw one, it might have been PayPal or somebody had talked, they're going to do passkey. I keep going up every day looking to see when can I set up my passkey for PayPal. And so I'm all in on that from a personal use. From an enterprise business use, I think it's evolutionary, because unless you're a brand new startup that doesn't have any legacy, you're going to have passwords somewhere in your system. So you can say you're going to be passwordless, you can have systems that are going to be passwordless, but somewhere along the way you're going to hit where you're going to need a password to do something. So I like the idea of obscuring it and making it something that maybe the user doesn't need to enter. But I think the other fear I have in some ways is as passwords become less and less upfront, they're going to become the neglected child that's sitting back, and people are going to forget it's there. And then that becomes maybe a point of entry or a security risk that needs to be kind of
basically the answer to this is
remembered.
exactly where I was, because I think if you're doing biometrics right, what value does the password add? And if you
Right.
kind of stick it as like plan C, then it becomes the unhappy path, which we know is always the weak point to an authentication chain, and that's what the hackers pick on.
Yep.
So if you can get to 100% biometrics and they're good, they're not phishable, man, I think that's where I see it as it could be revolutionary in terms of, well, I think the user experience is much better, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, how annoying is it if like you have everything, you've got the biometrics, and it's like, now I have to remember this password. And some organizations are still requiring password changes. And how irritating.
Yeah.
I feel like I came away from the conference season in 2022 saying, all right, it's here.
Yeah.
The passwordless, whether you call it revolution, evolution, whatever, it's here. It's here and now. And, you know, at Authenticate, we heard a lot of customers talking about it, that they're doing it. As you can see, it's very real, baked into the Okta product. Plus, there's vendors on top of it who extend beyond the IDP realm all the way down to the desktop being, you know, biometric-based, single sign-on passwordless. So, yeah, that was my takeaway.
Yeah, I agree. I think 2023 is the year where we'll see more and more of the passwordless. The part I'm really anxious to see how it plays out is the true passwordless. You know, we saw at Authenticate a couple of vendors saying, yeah, there's literally no passwords in the system. So there's nothing to go in outside of your FIDO or biometric. But then I did see someone there too that they had the great graphic and the thing we've all talked about. He goes, well, you know, biometrics are great until, you know, you see it in the James Bond movies. Oh, let's just cut off the hand and put that on the thing, and we've got the biometrics. You know, if you, how do you fix a compromised biometric? You know, which is always, you know, one of the challenges.
Just get a new thumb. It's fine.
I know. You just have a backup. You do a 3D printout of your thumb, and you got a backup.
It's all fun and games until someone loses a hand, and that other person takes it and
the
logs in
Avengers.
with it.
We saw that in the Avengers too. Remember, you know, the eye print. So I think biometrics are a really cool place to go, but it's also how do you have the backup and being able to, you know, the equivalent of the password reset in the passwordless biometric world. What does that look like, and how's that going to evolve?
I feel like this is, I'm with you guys on the passwordless stuff. The part that concerns me is the specificity when it comes to language. There are a lot of vendors and approaches for passwordless, and I'm doing in quotes that you can't see, that there is still a password in play. And that was immediately what I was thinking about. And you mentioned it. There are now some solutions that literally do not have a password. So, you know, you go to like, oh, I'm going to, you know, dump the database and get all the passwords, and hey, there's nothing there, right?
Yeah.
Or they're no good for anything, right? I think that is nirvana to get to. What concerns me, though, is messaging around, oh, we're going passwordless, but there's still a password somewhere behind the scenes, and it's like obfuscated, or it's the unhappy path, or whatever it may be, which I think is good, right? It's still progress. It's still moving things forward. I'll be really excited when there's, you know, you go to look at an authentication table or database, whatever it is, and there's nothing there, or it's like, you know, just a placeholder value that doesn't mean anything. I think that will be really the sea change moment. And who knows at that point? Maybe it is, hey, we've 3D printed a new thumb for somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
And
or you get to the point where you know, for me, there's like an in-between step there, or even an evolution past that, where you start thinking about ephemeral accounts. It's like, hey, the account only exists, and the login, whatever it looks like, only exists just in time for this single purpose. So it's, you know, even if it is passwordless or biometrics, it's gone before it can be used any other way.
And you've got a couple other controls that control when does that ephemeral begin
Exactly.
and end. This concept of zero standing privileges, for example, right?
Yeah, so you're talking about, you know, things to look for in the future. It's like, you know, imagine a passwordless world that's ephemeral. That then all of a sudden becomes something that makes the enterprise revolutionary at that point in time, and not just evolutionary.
That's right.
So now you've got this session length that we're back to again. It's like, I feel we're going a little bit cyclical. It's like, all right, well, we removed the password. Now we have like this no password, but it's only good for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
And now we're back to, okay, well, how long is that session good for? Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, how do I
Yeah.
steal
Yeah.
that
Well,
session?
imagine
Make
if
it
you could base that on like user behavior analytics, where it understands, how, what your typing patterns are, or how you work efficiently, and it could intelligently go, hey, well, I know if it's Jim logging in, he's going to need 10 minutes to do this. Jeff may need 15 minutes, and so it can kind of add intelligence to kind of make it a customized ephemeral.
I'm even thinking about continuous authentication at that point, especially if you're using something like a camera. You're sitting there on the computer. Maybe you can dial down how accurate it has to be, because they give out the Windows Hello scenario where it's hitting you with the camera. You actually have to eyeball into the camera for it to authenticate you. I wonder if there's some lower level. It's like, oh, Jim's still there. He's not looking, but we can recognize his face without him looking at the camera.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That Windows Hello is a little bit interesting because I have it on my computer, and if you have it set up through Windows, you do have to stare right at the camera. How are you supposed to click OK if you can't?
Yeah, exactly.
Down?
Yeah.
The usability is a little bit I get the concept, it works, but I don't know how many times I'm looking at it, I'm like, I got to hit the OK button. And I'm like trying to not move my head or my eyes.
Yeah.
And kind of hit it with my peripheral vision. I think there's still some work to be done.
There's some user experience issues that need to be
Yeah.
resolved for that kind of stuff, I think.
Plus the privacy side too, right? I think there is a concern of like, well, this camera's always on. What else is it collecting, and where is that data going? And people naturally will, some will trust it, some won't, and there'll be a whole bunch of people in the middle who aren't sure until something else happens. I think of, there's a lot of like car cameras now in the cabin to detect how sleepy you are, right? Maybe you're wearing sunglasses, or maybe, I don't know, something happened, and you aren't sleepy, but it's detecting it's a kind of a false positive. Like, I think it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's see how it works with the cars first and see how that works and like pull it forward. But yeah, continuous authentication will be interesting. You mentioned the keystroke dynamics, typing cadence, right? Things like that. I find that interesting because people do have such different, patterns of typing, and certainly people who learned how to type, and maybe they learned how to type on a typewriter, like literally a typewriter, or maybe it's a keyboard, or maybe they never learned to type and they kind of hunt and peck around. It is interesting. I've been able to see some of those technologies over the years, and it was interesting then. I can only imagine that it's gotten better.
Yeah.
But it does require, some agent to sit on the device to then say, okay, well, this is how you type on your laptop. How do you type on your
phone? What if it's a full keyboard versus a smaller keyboard?
Keycaps change. Yeah. All that stuff, I think, introduces a lot of variance, and I think trying to simplify it would make a lot of sense.
And as we're moving more towards voice too, and different kinds of interfaces, how do you evolve that? But I mean, it's all builds a profile of patterns and behaviors that maybe it can make intelligent decisions on.
Yeah. Well, they turned the lights on, which
I was going to say, they're shutting down around us.
Yeah. It's like the bar, right? The lights go on. Everybody's supposed to get out. Let's go ahead and end on a lighter note. I'm not going to let you live it down because I want to thank you because I love the Struts. Can't get enough of them. Give me something new to listen to. What's a new music, artist, band, whatever? Doesn't have to be like new on the scene,
right?
But like somebody that you would like totally recommend people to check out.
I've been really digging lately. I learned about this band about 5-6 years ago on Jules Holland. He has a show on the BBC where he does a Friday night show and new bands. So this band, they're out of Boston. They're called Lake Street Dive, and they're amazing. They put out their latest album last year. A couple of their songs actually made airplay, but their older stuff is amazing. And they kind of have a jazzy tone. I think the lead singer, she and her brother or somebody has like a side gig of a jazz band too. But their music is spectacular. Their singing is great. So Lake Street Dive.
Lake Street Dive.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check that one out.
Completely the opposite of the Struts too. So it's totally different.
That's fine. Hey, you know what? Variety is good. Jim, how about yourself? Any new artists?
I'm going to name one.
Okay.
You might be like, that's not new. Dave Fenley.
Not familiar with
Okay.
him.
Does a lot of covers. I mean, this guy's got an amazing voice. So I'm going to recommend the song Stuck on You, which is...
Huey Lewis cover?
Yes. And... no, who is it? It's a cover. Who's the guy on American Idol now?
John Legend?
Lionel Richie.
Lionel Richie.
So it's Stuck on You by Lionel
Oh,
Richie.
that stuck on you.
Yes. Mind-blowing.
A little bit of trivia on that album. That album was recorded at Bear Creek Studios in Woodinville, Washington.
Oh, really?
Yep.
So
Of course
Stuck
you would
on
know
You
that,
by
Eric.
Dave Fenley.
Of course you would know that.
Well, it's 10 minutes from my house.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. Right. All right, so we have Lake Street Dive. We've got Dave Fenley. Mine is a band called Royal Blood. They're
Oh,
an
I love those
English,
guys.
rock band duo. I love, first of all, just kick-ass rock music. But I like bands that are interesting in that this band is only two people. And it started off as a drummer and a bassist. And they're like, yeah.
Well, it's
and
Danger Mouse is in that band too, right? Is Danger Mouse Royal Blood too?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I know the two guys that are in it. Mike Kerr and Ben Thatcher.
Oh, okay.
And one of them just plays bass, and he does incredible things
Yeah.
to make the bass not sound like a bass sometimes. And it reminds me of a band from my youth from Chicago area, Local H. Again, two people who put out a ton of noise. I was fortunate to see them at the Vic in downtown Chicago, and I was blown away by, there's this guy with a guitar, and there's this guy on drums, and all of this is coming from just those two people.
That's awesome.
Which is, yeah, it was so great. So band called Royal Blood, definitely, kind of, they've had a few different hits that are out there, so maybe they're not kind of,
Okay.
super unknown, but definitely.
I'll give you one more bonus.
Okay,
based on
bonus.
that
Give
one.
me a bonus.
I saw they opened up for the Black Keys that I saw about a month ago. They're called the Velveteers.
Velveteers.
And it's a female singer, and she plays guitar, and they have two drummers, and they share the kit together. They share the kit, so they're both sitting at the same kit, and they can spin over, and so there's a little bit of keyboards and a little bit of a bass guitar, but for the most part, it's the two guys sitting at the same kit, just banging away John Bonham style, and the lead singer screaming on a guitar. So it's a ton of noise, but it's spectacular to watch.
Yeah. Okay. All right, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up there because we're literally getting like kicked out. Walls are starting to shake. Eric, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks to the Okta team for bringing us out here, as well as RSM. You can find us on the web, identitycenter.com. We're on Twitter at IADAC Podcast. I feel like I'm racing a shutdown sun.
Before the walls fall down.
Yeah, exactly. So with that, we'll go ahead and leave it. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk with y'all in the next one. Thanks for listening to the Identity at the Center podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe and visit us on the web at identityatthecenter.com.